Oh, hello again. Welcome to lesson 2. Time for us to strap on the old euphonium here and go over, hopefully for your sake, very briefly, what we looked at in the last lesson. Now, when I was a nipper, the worst thing in the world was going over what we had done in the last lesson. Do you know why? Because I had 9 times out of 10 failed to practice. That's right. And I've taught enough students to know that most of them don't practice at all between lessons. And in many ways, that's fine. You will only improve as fast as you want to improve. And if you want to improve, there are no hacks, no tricks or tips that can help you skip the quote-unquote hard part. That is, playing something on your guitar frequently and ideally for long stretches, whether it's an exercise you've been set or not. But before we go over the last lesson's exercise 1, and you demonstrate to me, or to be fair, to yourself, how much or how little practice you've been doing, we have to tune up the old euphonium here. Now, even if you've been playing for hours every day since lesson 1, I still, of course, would not expect you to have developed enough ear to tune your guitar perfectly or even well. And that doesn't really matter because, as I tend to say a lot, at this point, we're just developing your muscle memory, and your ear for music should naturally develop alongside that. I would, however, spare a thought for your neighbours, friends and family who might have to overhear you practicing though. Think about it. Someone playing something repetitive on guitar over and over and over and over and over and over again is pretty annoying by itself. But if you're out of tune even slightly, as you probably are, it's going to be even more annoying to anyone that can hear you. So for that, you might like to consider baking them some cookies or muffins by way of saying sorry. So into tuning. So we will again use our ears here so that you can listen to my guitar and tune yours roughly to mine. I'll go through it rather quickly, as I will do in every beginner lesson. For if you need to take more time with it, there's no problem going back to lesson 1 if you really need to go through each string very slowly, and that's totally fine. As we spoke about previously, it can be tricky at first to hear whether your string is currently pitched higher or lower or already the same as mine, or as it should be, and that's what we're listening out for here and making the necessary adjustments. So going down in direction, but up in terms of pitch, if that makes sense, we'll start with string 6, then string 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But I will instead say the note of each string as I do it, just so hopefully you get used to what they're called for later on when knowing this kind of information is actually useful. E, A, D, G, onto B, and then E. Yeah. So as ever, remember to wind back this video, or as I say, go back to lesson 1 if you want to spend more time on tuning. And don't worry, it will certainly get easier as time goes on. So to recap exercise 1 quickly, we are basically doing the same little run across every string, starting with string 6, fret 0, and of course I won't specify a finger to use because on fret 0 you use no fingers at all. Isn't it easy? To begin with, I want you to either pick with a pick or plectrum just once in a downwards direction, or just using your thumb if you don't have a pick. You then, of course, on your 6th string again, play on fret 1 with your index finger, fret 2 with your middle finger, and fret 3 with your ring finger. Then we simply do the same thing on each string working down. If you can play along with me, it will look like this on the tab and sound like this. Let's go. and then back down again. Shit. And then back down again. There you go. I hope through practice that this has gotten easier to do as you build this connection between your brains and your fingers, as I'm so fond of saying. And if you feel confident enough with it, try alternating up and down strokes with your pick, or otherwise just try and do it faster if you can. The important thing is that the notes sound clean and clear, something I probably should have spoken more about in the previous lesson. Some beginners really struggle to apply quite enough pressure on the fretboard, so it's really something worth thinking about and working on if you can. And before you say, haha, Mickey Beats, you've spent a good X number of minutes already and you haven't even taught us anything new yet, well, congratulations, you're correct. This is what teaching is. To think that when I was a guitar teacher, I might be going over all of this same stuff 10 times or more a day with different students, going over the same exercises that they themselves hadn't practiced again and again. And then the next week doing it yet again, and so on and so on and so on. So you and I both should be grateful for the miracle of recorded video, because that way, neither of us need to go over any of this any more than we want or need to, all right? So in the last lesson, we talked about tablature, or tab, as a method to write down music for guitar players that is super simple in a way that us euphonium players can understand easily. So even though I'm about to introduce you to another yet very similar way of writing down guitar music, I will also show you what it looks like in tab. So far, we've been playing single notes, of course, but we have 6 strings at our disposal, so I say we might as well start using them. So while our first chord will indeed have 6 notes in it, all playing at once, a chord is really any combination of 2 notes or more. So this is a chord, this is a chord, and this is a chord. But the type of chord we're going to play is called an open chord, which is a simple way of saying it will involve open strings, or strings played on the 0 fret, as it were. So that means despite having 6 notes in it, we only need to actually press down 2 notes on the fretboard with our fingers in this case. So to do that, you will see on the screen now a chord diagram. You can see the 6 vertical lines that denote, yes, you guessed it, the 6 strings of your guitar. You'll remember that tab has the 6 strings represented with 6 horizontal lines. A chord diagram is like rotating a tab 90 degrees, so from the left-hand side we have string 6, 5, 4, and so on. Unlike tab, however, on a chord chart we have horizontal lines for the frets, and with open chords we don't play any notes higher than the 3rd fret, so we don't really need to see the other 20 frets or so on the diagram. So while chord diagrams don't always tell you what fingers to use, I'm going to include numbers here to make it super clear. Previously, I was saying index, middle, and ring, but now I'm just going to use numbers 1, 2, 3. So this chord diagram of an E minor chord tells you to put your 2nd finger or your middle finger on the 2nd fret on the 5th string, and your 3rd or ring finger also on the 2nd fret but on the 4th string, like this. And once you've done that, you use your pick or your thumb to strum all the strings down from 6. Congratulations, you've just played an E minor chord. As I say, a chord is basically any combination of 2 or more notes, and there are all kinds of names for all kinds of chords, but the basic building blocks of the music we play are known as major and minor chords. Musically, the easiest way to tell the difference between them is that broadly, major chords sound happy, and minor chords sound basically sad. You will notice as well, either in the chord diagrams you've just seen or by noticing my fingers, that the only difference between these E major and E minor chords are a single note and a single finger. And it's interesting that such a small difference has such a big effect on the sound of a chord. Technically, what's going on here is that every scale that we play in, let's take E major scale as an example, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There are corresponding numbers for each note or degree of that scale. And that's true for every scale, whether it's an E, an A, a D, or a G, or whatever. So if we were to describe the notes in an E major chord, yet another way of doing so would be just using those numbers. So the lowest note, the open note here on the 6th string, we'll say is the first note in the E major scale. So that's a 1. Then the second note, in this case played with our middle finger or second finger on the 2nd fret on the 5th string, happens to be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th degree of the scale. The next note played by the ring or 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8th degree of the scale, or 1st degree, considering that there are only 8 notes in the scale in the first place, therefore meaning that we're kind of going back to 1. So those two notes in this chord are the same note, just an octave apart, if that makes sense. I won't bother explaining this much further, but the next note, which should be your index or first finger on the 1st fret on the 3rd string, this is the do, re, mi, 1, 2, 3, the 3rd in the scale. This is the note that makes a major chord, the 3rd. And when you flatten that 3rd, which is to say take it down a single note or a semitone down, it becomes an E minor chord. So it's the 3rd that is the only difference in both of these chords. A flattened 3rd. You don't need to really understand this whatsoever at this stage, but if you're wondering what makes major and minor chords different, it's this. But either way, to explain that, we've learned two chords, the E minor chord and the E major chord. Both very simple and hopefully changing from one to the other and back again is relatively easy. Okay, so what can we do with these lovely chords? We strum them, that's what we do. And at this stage, it's fairly important. In fact, I'm going to assume that by now you have a pick or a plectrum to play your guitar with. Using your thumb is fine for single notes if you prefer, but strumming with your thumb isn't really going to work out well. So now, and I promise this is the last time that you need to learn anything new as far as ways to write or visualize music, but a chord chart is a simple way when you're playing chords of knowing which chord to change to and for how long. So while you're probably aware that people often count 1, 2, 3, 4 before launching into a song, a piece of music can have any time signature. So 1, 2, 3, 4 means that there are 4 beats in a bar, but it could also have only 2 or 3 or 6 or 8 or 13 beats in a bar or whatever. But we will keep it simple for now, and in musical notation, this is usually written like this: 4 beats in a bar. And now holding an E minor chord because it's slightly easier, which is again simply your middle or second finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and your ring or 3rd finger also on the 2nd fret on the 4th string. And when we play it, I'm going to ask you to play 2 bars, and on each of those 4 beats of the bar, you strum downwards like this. 1, 2, 4. And I'll count you in now before we start. See if you can play it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. And then we're going to add upstrokes as well as downstrokes by adding ands in between each of the 4 beats of the bar. It will sound and look like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And again, if you play it with me, I'll count you in. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. And 1, 2, 3 and 4. And 1, 2, 3 and 4 and yeah. Great, so you've just played 2 bars of E minor. Now after 2 bars of E minor, we're going to add our first or index finger to the 1st fret on the 3rd string Now making this chord an E major and playing 2 bars of that. I'll count you in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Yeah. So all up, that's 2 bars of straight down up strumming of E minor, followed by another 2 bars of down up strumming the E major chord. This is exercise 2. And that's it. Pretty easy, really. All we're doing is adding a finger and then taking it off again after every 2 bars. So whenever you pick up the guitar and feel that you are relatively in tune, again, you might like to use the section earlier in this video or the longer version of it in our first lesson, if that helps, as well as practice exercise 1, perhaps as a warm-up. I want you to get your strum on with exercise 2, getting used to changing from one fairly simple chord to another. Perhaps thinking about the difference in sound between a major and a minor chord. It's all good stuff. For the next lesson, we're going to introduce a few more interesting open chords in a chord diagram, as we've seen today, and introduce a variation in the old up, down strumming pattern that we've used here that will actually eventually start to sound like you're playing a song rather than just an exercise. Because in many ways, when you're playing guitar, you're usually either playing single notes, as we are doing in exercise 1, or multiple notes at once, like in a chord, which is what we're doing in exercise 2. And while we will of course learn to do both, a lot of people go on, in a sense, to specialize in one or the other, which is why people say we have rhythm guitar players who tend to play chords and lead guitar players that tend to do the fancy shreddy stuff and all that razzle-dazzle. And that's all a long way down the track. All you need to do for now is get into the habit of picking up your euphonium and making some noise. These exercises demand specific things of you, but playing anything at all and experimenting is just as important part of practicing as anything else. All we are really doing is getting used to this contraption. Happy playing! That was alright, wasn't it? We good? Yeah, okay. Sorry, bud. Sorry.